The dumpling changed everything, but nobody knew it would cost 3 lives and birth an empire worth $230 million. Sandra was 8 when she first saw Aki collapsed in the alley behind her family's struggling noodle shop in Tokyo's Kabukicho district. Her parents served as Yakuza soldiers. She served a starving orphan. For 9 months, she smuggled him food while gangsters ate inside, never knowing the boy in the shadows would one day rule them all. When Aki disappeared, dragged away by men in dark suits, he made her an impossible promise. "I'll come back for you when I'm powerful enough to protect you." She pressed her jade bracelet into his palm, keeping the matching one for herself. "Then I'll wait." 15 years evaporated like steam from hot broth. Aki became something between a ghost and a god in the underworld. Sandra became a social worker fighting the same darkness that had swallowed him. Tonight, at a community meeting about organized crime in Shibuya, their worlds would collide. Neither knew they were moments away from the reunion that would shake Tokyo's criminal empire to its foundation. Aki Yamamoto woke at 5 in the morning in a minimalist penthouse overlooking Tokyo Tower. The apartment was all sharp edges and cold surfaces. Marble floors. Black leather furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a city that both feared and obeyed him. He moved through the space like a shark through water, efficient, emotionless, always hunting. The coffee maker was Italian, imported, worth more than a car. He poured a cup and left it untouched on the counter. In his walk-in closet, 30 identical black suits hung in perfect rows. He selected one without thought. The apartment held no photographs, no art, no evidence that a human being actually occupied the space. It looked like a showroom for expensive emptiness. His phone vibrated against the glass table. His lieutenant, Takeshi. "The Sapporo territory is secured. 14 million transferred." Aki typed back a single word. "Good. 14 million yen." He felt nothing. Numbers on a screen. Another expansion. Another victory that tasted like ash. He walked to his office, unlocked a floor safe hidden beneath a false panel. Inside, a small jade bracelet rested on black velvet. He lifted it carefully, held it to the morning light. The stone was smooth, worn from 15 years of being carried in his pocket, touched during meetings, gripped during violence, the only anchor to who he'd been before he became what he was. Every morning the same ritual. Every morning the same question burns in his chest. Where is she? The morning meeting with his captains was routine. Status reports on protection rackets, loan operations, gambling dens. Aki listened without expression, approved strategies with nods, dispensed orders that would be obeyed without question. His organization controlled 6 districts now, employed 400 men, and generated revenue that would make legitimate corporations envious. After the meeting, Takeshi lingered. "Boss, you seem distracted." "I'm focused." "You've been saying that for 3 years. Ever since you started this thing with the community centers." Aki's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "What thing?" "The anonymous donations. The youth programs. You've poured millions into Shibuya alone. The men are asking questions. Let them ask." Takeshi studied him with the familiarity of someone who'd known Aki since they were teenagers running protection schemes in Osaka. "This is about finding her, isn't it? The girl from before." Aki's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. "We're done discussing this. Maybe she doesn't want to be found. Maybe she built a life far away from this world." "I said we're done." Takeshi bowed slightly and left. But he was right. Aki had spent 3 years systematically infiltrating Shibuya's social services network, funding programs, creating opportunities to search. Sandra Nakamura. A common enough name that 3 private investigators had come back empty. Her family's noodle shop had closed in 2012. No forwarding address. No digital footprint. But Aki knew her. If Sandra was still in Tokyo, she'd be helping people in the neighborhoods where darkness lived. That's who she'd always been. So he'd positioned himself, created reasons to monitor those spaces, waiting, searching, hoping in a way that felt foreign to the man he'd become. His phone buzzed. A reminder. Community meeting tonight. 7 p.m. Shibuya Community Center. Youth crime prevention discussion. Aki usually sent representatives to maintain appearances of civic engagement. But today something pulled at him. An instinct he'd learned to trust. He typed a response to his assistant. "I'll attend personally." He didn't know why. Just a feeling that tonight mattered. The memories came like they always did, unbidden and vivid. 15 years ago. He was 9 years old, orphaned 6 months earlier when his parents died in a car accident. The state placed him with his uncle, a violent alcoholic who saw Aki as free labor and a punching bag. After 3 months of abuse, Aki ran. Better to starve on the streets than die slowly in that apartment. He survived 2 weeks eating from trash bins, sleeping in train station bathrooms, stealing when desperation overcame fear. By the 14th day he was feverish, dizzy, barely conscious. He found himself in Kabukicho, collapsed in an alley behind a small noodle shop. Through the back door he could see inside. Yakuza soldiers eating, laughing, their dragon tattoos visible when they moved. The owner, a thin man with tired eyes, served them with nervous efficiency. A small girl with pigtails helped clear tables. She was maybe 8 years old, tiny, but she moved through the room like she understood the dangers surrounding her. When she carried dishes to the back, she saw Aki through the doorway. Their eyes met. She didn't scream, didn't run, just stared at him with an expression that broke something in his chest because it wasn't pity. It was recognition. Like she saw him as a person, not a street rat, not trash, but someone who mattered. Sandra Nakamura had lived her entire life in the shadow of violence. Her father ran the noodle shop as a front for Yakuza money. Her mother worked there, silent and scared. They paid protection money, served criminals, and survived in the cracks between legal and illegal. Sandra knew not to ask questions, not to stare at the tattoos, not to remember the faces. But that day when she saw the boy in the alley, something inside her rebelled against all the fear and silence. Her friend from school, Yuki, whispered, "Who's that?" "A boy who needs help. He looks sick. We should tell someone." "Tell who?" "The gangsters." "Your father then." Sandra looked at her lunch, sitting in a small bento box her mother had packed that morning. Rice, pickled vegetables, a small piece of grilled fish, a perfectly folded omelet. Her only meal until dinner. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, words spoken before she died. "Sandra-chan, we may live surrounded by darkness, but we don't have to become it. Find one person to help. Just one. That's how you stay human." Sandra grabbed her bento box and walked toward the alley. "Sandra, where are you going?" Yuki hissed. She ignored her friend. Up close the boy looked worse. His clothes were torn and filthy. His face was gaunt, lips cracked, eyes glassy with fever. "Hello," Sandra said softly in Japanese. "I'm Sandra. You look very hungry." The boy tried to speak. His voice came out as a croak. Before we dive deeper into this story, click the subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. If this story moves you, share it with someone who loves a good tale. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Sandra pushed the bento box toward him. "Please take it. It's okay." The boy grabbed the food with shaking hands, ate with desperate speed, tears streaming down his dirty face. Sandra watched him devour everything in the box, even licking the inside for the last grains of rice. When he finished, he looked at her with an expression that would be burned into her memory forever. Gratitude so pure it hurts to witness. "Thank you," he whispered. "What's your name?" "Aki." "Are you okay, Aki?" He shook his head weakly. "No. I'm very sick." Sandra's heart cracked. "I'll bring you food tomorrow too. And medicine if I can find some. I promise." Aki's eyes widened with disbelief. "You would do that? For me?" "Yes. I promise." Sandra had to go back inside before her father noticed, but she looked back 3 times. Aki sat holding the empty bento box like it was treasure, watching her disappear into the restaurant. Aki blinked, returning to the present. The memory faded but never truly left. He checked his watch. 6:45 in the evening. The meeting started at 7. He stood, straightened his tie, touched the jade bracelet in his pocket one more time. "I'm coming, Sandra. I don't know if you'll be there. But I'm coming." What Aki didn't know was that Sandra would absolutely be there. And she'd thought about him every single day for 15 years, wondering if he'd survived, if he'd found peace, if he remembered the girl who'd given him dumplings in an alley while gangsters ate inside. Aki arrived at the Shibuya Community Center at 6:55 in the evening. The building was modest, well-maintained but clearly underfunded. Inside, folding chairs filled a multipurpose room. About 60 people sat waiting, a mix of social workers, concerned parents, former gang members turned advocates, and a handful of police officers. Aki straightened his suit, aware that his expensive clothing marked him as an outsider here. A young woman at the registration table glanced up. "Name, please?" "Aki Yamamoto. Yamamoto Enterprises." Her expression shifted, becoming guarded. "The developer. You actually came. Is that surprising? Most developers send lawyers to these things. They don't show up personally." I'm not most developers. She handed him a name tag with obvious reluctance. We'll see about that. Aki entered the room. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. That's him. The millionaire. Probably here to buy up everything and gentrify the neighborhood. I heard he has Yakuza connections. Aki found a seat in the back row, ignoring the stares. An elderly man stood at the front podium, calling the meeting to order. Aki barely listened to the opening remarks about youth violence and intervention programs. His eyes scanned the room systematically, searching for something he couldn't name. Then he saw her. She was standing near the side door, holding a clipboard, talking quietly to a teenage boy who looked angry and scared. The woman was in her mid-20s, wearing simple clothes, no jewelry except for a jade bracelet on her left wrist. Her hair was longer now, her face older, but Aki recognized her instantly. The same kind eyes. The same gentle way of moving. The same presence that said this person sees you, really sees you, even when you're invisible to everyone else. Sandra. His heart stopped. 15 years of searching. 3 years of systematic infiltration of social services networks. Millions of yen spent. And here she was 20 feet away, comforting a troubled kid the way she'd once comforted him. Aki stood abruptly. The metal chair scraped against the floor. Several people glanced at him. He didn't notice. He couldn't breathe. His hands shook. This was impossible. He'd imagined this moment 10,000 times, but reality was overwhelming. Sandra finished talking to the teenager, sent him to sit down, then turned to find a seat herself. Her eyes swept across the room and landed on Aki. She froze. The clipboard slipped from her hands, clattered to the floor. Her face went pale. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the crowded room while the elderly man at the front talked about statistics and intervention strategies that neither of them heard. Sandra's mouth formed a single word, no sound, just lips moving. Aki? He nodded once, unable to speak. She covered her mouth with both hands, eyes filling with tears. The jade bracelet on her wrist caught the fluorescent light. The elderly man noticed the disruption. Excuse me, is everything all right? Neither of them answered. They were walking toward each other like sleepwalkers, like people in a dream who feared sudden waking. They met in the center of the room. 60 pairs of eyes watched them, confused, curious, but Aki and Sandra were completely unaware of the audience. Is it really you? Sandra whispered. Yes, it's me. 15 years. I didn't know if you were alive or dead or... Her voice broke. Aki reached out slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile and precious. He touched her arm where the jade bracelet rested against her skin. You kept it. Every single day. I never took it off. Aki pulled the matching bracelet from his pocket. Sandra gasped, fresh tears spilling over. You kept yours too. It was all I had of you. The elderly man cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm sorry, but we need to begin the meeting. Could you two perhaps continue this reunion outside? They didn't move. Couldn't move. Sandra was crying openly now, and Aki realized with distant surprise that moisture was running down his own face too. He hadn't cried in 12 years. Hadn't felt anything in 12 years. But standing in front of Sandra, all the walls he'd built crumbled into dust. I looked for you, he said. For years. I couldn't find you. I looked for you too. But I didn't even know your last name. I just knew Aki. That was all. A social worker near the front spoke up gently. Sandra, honey, why don't you take a break? We can handle this session. Sandra nodded, unable to speak. She took Aki's hand and they walked out of the community center into the Tokyo evening. The streets were crowded with people heading to dinner, to izakayas, to the train stations. Aki and Sandra stood on the sidewalk, still holding hands, still crying, still unable to process the impossibility of this moment. Coffee? Aki managed. Yes, please. They found a quiet cafe 2 blocks away, sat in a corner booth away from the windows. The server brought green tea neither of them touched. For a long time they just looked at each other. Finally, Sandra spoke. What happened to you, Aki? After those men took you away? His jaw tightened at the memory. My uncle found me. The Yakuza soldiers in your father's restaurant told him about the street kid being fed in the alley. He came for me. I thought he'd kill me for running away, but he did something worse. He sold me. Sandra's eyes widened in horror. Sold you? To a loan shark named Kurosawa. I became a collector. 9 years old, knocking on doors, reminding people what happened when they didn't pay. It was effective. People paid when they saw a child doing that kind of work. It meant the organization was serious. Had no limits. Oh, Aki. I survived. I learned business. By the time I was 14, I was running my own crew. By 18, I'd taken over Kurosawa's entire operation when he died of a heart attack. By 21, I controlled 3 districts. Now I control 6. Sandra processed this slowly. You're Yakuza. I'm what the streets made me. That's not an answer. Aki looked down at his hands, expensive suit, manicured nails, hands that had signed death warrants. Yes, I'm Yakuza. I run protection, loans, gambling. I employ 400 men. I'm everything your grandmother warned you about. Sandra sat back and Aki waited for her to leave, to run, to reject what he'd become. Instead, she did something unexpected. She reached across the table and took his hands. What happened to the boy who promised to come back when he was powerful enough to protect me? Aki looked up, startled. You remember that? I remember everything. Every conversation. Every dumpling I brought you. Every time you smiled when I told you stories about school. I remember the day you disappeared, and I remember your promise. Did you think I'd keep it? I hoped. For 15 years, I hoped. Aki turned his hands over, gripped hers tightly. I kept it. Everything I did, every choice, every compromise, every terrible thing I did to survive and climb and win, it was all to become powerful enough to find you. To protect you. To prove that you didn't waste your kindness on nothing. It was never wasted, Aki. How can you say that? Look at what I became. Sandra smiled sadly. I became a social worker specializing in gang intervention because of you. Every kid I help, I see your face. Every teenager I pull out of the Yakuza pipeline, I'm saving the boy you were. You shaped my entire life, Aki. Just like I shaped yours. They sat in silence, processing 15 years of separation compressed into minutes of conversation. What now? Aki asked quietly. I don't know. You're a crime boss. I fight crime. That's complicated. Yes. But I've been waiting for you for 15 years. I'm not ready to say goodbye. Neither am I. Sandra took a shaky breath. Then let's start slow. Let's just talk. Tell me everything. So they did. They sat in that cafe for 4 hours, talking until the staff started cleaning around them. Aki told her about his rise through the criminal underworld, the violence, the choices, the things he'd done to survive. He didn't sugarcoat or justify. He just told the truth. Sandra told him about her life. How her father's restaurant failed when she was 12. How they moved to Shibuya. How she put herself through university working 3 jobs. How she became a social worker because she couldn't save Aki, but maybe she could save others like him. By the time they left the cafe at midnight, something had shifted between them. The gap of 15 years hadn't disappeared, but it felt crossable now. Can I see you again? Aki asked as they stood on the sidewalk. Yes. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. Same time? Yes. They stood awkwardly, not knowing how to say goodbye. Finally, Sandra hugged him quickly and walked away toward the train station. Aki watched until she disappeared into the crowd, then pulled out his phone and called Takeshi. I found her. Takeshi's voice was cautious. Boss, that's good. But what does this mean? I don't know yet. But everything changes now. The organization? Everything. Aki hung up and looked at the jade bracelet in his palm. For the first time in 12 years, he felt something other than emptiness. Hope. Terrifying, dangerous, impossible hope. The next evening they met again. And the evening after that. For 2 weeks, they met every night, slowly rebuilding a connection that had started in an alley 15 years ago. They talked about everything except the impossible gulf between their worlds. Then Sandra asked the question Aki had been dreading. What do you do for a living? Does it involve hurting people? They were sitting in a park watching children play on swings. Aki took a long breath. Yes, sometimes. Not directly, but yes. Could you stop? Not without consequences. I have enemies, rivals. If I show weakness, they'll move against me. Against anyone connected to me. Sandra processed this. So being with you puts me in danger. Yes. And you can't just walk away from that life. Not without a war that would destroy everything I've built. Sandra looked at the children playing, then back at Aki. What if there was a third option? What do you mean? What if you stayed in your world but changed what you did with your power? Aki frowned. Explain. Sandra leaned forward, animated now. You control 6 districts. You employ 400 men. You have resources beyond what any social program could dream of. What if you used that infrastructure for something good? Good. Yes. What if your organization started targeting the things that create crime in the first place? Poverty. Lack of opportunity. Kids aging out of the system with nowhere to go. Aki stared at her. You want me to turn the Yakuza into a social services agency? Not entirely, but partially. You could create legitimate businesses that employ at-risk youth. You could fund programs. You could use your influence to protect, not exploit. My rivals would see it as weakness. Or they'd see it as expansion into new territory. You'd still be Yakuza, Aki. But you'd be Yakuza with a conscience. Aki sat back, mind racing. It was insane. It was impossible. It violated every rule of the criminal world he'd operated in for 15 years. But it was also brilliant. If I did this, he said slowly, I'd need someone to run the legitimate side. Someone the community would trust. Sandra smiled. I might know someone. That's how the Red Dragon Initiative was born. Aki didn't abandon his criminal empire. But he created a parallel structure that operated in the light. He started with a small program, funded through his organization, partnering with Sandra's community center. They offered job training, housing assistance, and mentorship to teenagers aging out of foster care and young people trying to leave gangs. The program had a unique advantage. Aki's reputation meant that rival gangs didn't interfere. His resources meant they could offer real opportunities, not just promises. The first month they helped 8 kids. The second month, 15. By the 6th month, they'd assisted 47 young people into stable housing and employment. The community was suspicious at first. A Yakuza boss funding social programs? It had to be a front, a scam, a way to recruit. But Sandra's involvement legitimized it. She was known, trusted, and loved in Shibuya's social services network. If Sandra Nakamura believed in this, maybe it was real. The media caught wind of the story a year in. From street kid to crime boss, the unlikely partnership changing Tokyo's underworld. The article revealed Aki's background, his rise through Yakuza ranks, and his current dual role as both criminal and philanthropist. It revealed Sandra's role as the program director and mentioned their childhood connection, though it left out the romantic element that had developed between them. The piece went viral in Japan. Social media exploded with debate. Was this redemption or manipulation? Could a criminal do good? Should society accept help from someone who still operated outside the law? Aki and Sandra read the article together in his penthouse, the first time she'd visited his home. They're calling you the Robin Hood Yakuza, Sandra said, scrolling through comments. Robin Hood stole from the rich. I steal from everyone. But now you're also giving back. Is that enough? Sandra looked at him seriously. I don't know. But it's more than you were doing before. And it's helping real people. That has to count for something. The program expanded. They opened a second location in Roppongi. Then a third in Ikebukuro. Each neighborhood had its own criminal element, but Aki's reputation and careful negotiations with rival organizations created safe spaces for the programs to operate. By the second year, they'd helped 217 young people. 53 had found stable employment. 31 had entered vocational schools. 12 had enrolled in university. But success brought complications. Some of Aki's own captains began questioning his focus. Why pour resources into social programs when they could expand into new territories? Why risk exposure for a bunch of kids who'd probably fail anyway? Takeshi raised these concerns in a private meeting. Boss, I support what you're doing. But the men are getting restless. They don't understand why we're playing social workers. Aki's voice was cold. Are they questioning my leadership? No. Never. But they're questioning the direction. Tell them this. Every kid we help is one less kid joining a rival gang. Every person we pull out of poverty is one less person vulnerable to exploitation by our enemies. This isn't charity. It's a strategic investment in our territory. Takeshi nodded slowly. That makes sense. But boss, there's another issue. What? Your relationship with Nakamura-san. It's becoming public knowledge. That makes her a target. Aki had feared this. In the 18 months since their reunion, his relationship with Sandra had deepened into something neither of them could deny. They loved each other. But love in his world came with a price. Double her security detail, Aki ordered. Discreet but constant. Already done. But boss, you know the only real way to protect her is? Don't say it. You need to make it official. Marry her. Make her part of the family structure. That gives her protection under Yakuza code. No one touches the wife of a clan leader. Aki closed his eyes. She deserves better than this life. She chose this life when she chose you. That night, Aki told Sandra about the threat. They were in his apartment, looking out over Tokyo's lights. I can't guarantee your safety unless you're formally recognized as part of my world, he explained. That means marriage. Sandra was quiet for a long time. Is that why you want to marry me? For my protection? No. I want to marry you because I've loved you since I was 9 years old. But I won't do it unless you understand what it means. You'll be Yakuza affiliated. Your reputation will be compromised. Your social work colleagues will question everything. You'll live with security guards. With threats. With the knowledge that people want to hurt you to get to me. Sandra turned to face him. Ask me anyway. What? Ask me to marry you. Not because it's strategic. Not because it's safe. Ask me because you love me and you want to build a life together despite all the impossibility. Aki reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sandra gasped. You've been carrying that? For 3 months. Waiting for the right moment. This is the right moment. Aki opened the box. Inside was a simple ring with a jade stone matching their bracelets. Sandra Nakamura, 15 years ago you saved my life with dumplings and kindness. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me hope when I had none. I promised I'd come back when I was powerful enough to protect you. I'm powerful now, but I realize I'll never be powerful enough to deserve you. Still I'm asking, will you marry me? Sandra was crying and laughing simultaneously. Yes, of course yes. I've been waiting 15 years to say yes. Aki slipped the ring on her finger. They kissed as the city lights sparkled below them, two people from different worlds choosing to build something impossible together. The wedding was small, held at the same community center where they'd reunited. 75 guests filled the room. Sandra's social work colleagues sat on one side, clearly uncomfortable. Aki's organization members sat on the other, equally uncomfortable. But in the middle sat the young people from the Red Dragon Initiative, the real reason any of this mattered. They exchanged vows in front of everyone, promising to honor both their pasts and their impossible present. Aki, Sandra said, her voice steady, when I was 8 and you were starving, I gave you food because it was the right thing to do. I didn't know you'd become who you are. I didn't know we'd stand here today. But I'm glad we did. You carry darkness, but you also carry light. I promise to remind you of that light every single day. Sandra, Aki said, his voice rough with emotion, you saved me twice. Once with dumplings in an alley. Once with hope in a community center. Everything I've built, everything I am, exists because you saw worth in a dying boy when no one else did. I promise to spend my life proving you weren't wrong. I promise to use my power to protect, not destroy. I promise to be worthy of you. They kissed as husband and wife while both sides of their world applauded, united at least in this moment. The reception was at Aki's largest legitimate business, a restaurant he'd opened 6 months earlier that employed 15 former gang members. The young people from the program gave speeches about second chances. Sandra's colleagues cautiously mingled with Yakuza soldiers. Worlds collided and somehow didn't explode. Late in the evening, Aki and Sandra snuck away to the rooftop. They stood together, looking at Tokyo stretching endlessly in all directions. Do you think this can last? Sandra asked quietly. I don't know. But I know I'll fight for it. Even if it costs you your empire? The empire means nothing without you. A young voice interrupted them. They turned to see a teenage girl standing in the doorway, maybe 14, thin, scared, with bruises on her arms. I'm sorry, the girl said. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was told I could find Sandra-san here. Sandra immediately went to her. It's okay. What's your name? Hannah. I need help. I ran away from my foster home. I have nowhere to go. Aki and Sandra looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. This was why they'd done everything. For this moment. For this girl. For the chance to be for someone else what Sandra had been for Aki. Come with us, Sandra said gently. Let's get you some food and find you somewhere safe to stay. They brought Hannah downstairs, fed her, made calls, ensured she'd be protected and cared for. As they worked, Aki realized something profound. The empire, the money, the power, none of it mattered as much as this. As being able to help one terrified kid find safety. The Red Dragon Initiative continued to grow. By the 3rd year, they'd expanded to 7 locations across Tokyo. 463 young people had participated. The model was being studied by social services agencies across Japan. But the real measure of success was simpler. Every time a kid like Hannah found them, desperate and scared and left with hope, that was victory. Every time someone aged out of the system and found a path forward instead of falling into the same criminal world that had swallowed Aki, that was redemption. Aki never stopped being Yakuza. His organization still operated in the shadows, still made money from protection and loans and gambling. But now it also built something. Created opportunities. Offered second chances. And every morning, when Aki woke up in the penthouse next to his wife, he touched the jade bracelet on his wrist and remembered who he'd been. A dying boy in an alley who'd been saved by dumplings and kindness. That boy would never have believed the life he'd eventually build. Would never have imagined that the small girl with pigtails would become his wife, his partner, his moral compass in a world without many morals. But here they were. Living proof that kindness creates ripples that spread in ways no one can predict. That a single act of compassion can echo through 15 years and birth something impossible. The story didn't end with a fairy tale conclusion. Aki still faced threats. Sandra still navigated the impossible contradiction of loving a criminal while fighting crime. The Red Dragon Initiative still struggled with funding and public perception. But every day they chose each other. Every day they chose to help one more kid. Every day they proved that even in darkness, light can survive if you refuse to let it die. 5 years after their wedding, Sandra found Aki in his office late at night, staring at a map of Tokyo covered in pins representing program locations. "Come to bed," she said. "In a minute. I'm planning the expansion to Yokohama." Sandra walked behind his chair, wrapped her arms around him. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "We've helped 1,027 people now. 1,027 lives changed because an 8-year-old girl gave a starving boy her lunch." Aki covered her hands with his. "That 8-year-old girl changed more than 1,027 lives. She changed mine first. Everything else followed from that. Do you ever regret it? This impossible life we've built?" Aki turned to face her. "Never. Not once. Not for a single second. Even though I complicated everything? Especially because you complicated everything. You gave me a reason to be more than what the streets made me. That's worth every complication." Sandra kissed him softly. "Then come to bed, my impossible husband. Tomorrow we're meeting with 20 new program participants. You need rest. Tomorrow we're saving 20 more lives. Yes. 20 more ripples spread out from one act of kindness 15 years ago." They left the office together, hand in hand, two people from different worlds who'd built a bridge between them out of jade bracelets and impossible promises and the stubborn refusal to accept that kindness can't change everything. Because it could. It did. It would continue to, one dumpling at a time, one scared kid at a time, one impossible love story at a time. The city outside glittered with a million lights, each one a story, a struggle, a life waiting for someone to see them when they were invisible. Aki and Sandra had found each other across 15 years and an impossible gulf. Now they spend their lives helping others do the same. Finding connection. Finding hope. Finding proof that the smallest act of kindness can echo through time and birth empires, both criminal and compassionate. And every morning when they woke together, they touched their matching jade bracelets and remembered who they'd been. Remembering what they'd promised. Remember that love, real love, keeps its promises even when the world says it's impossible. Especially then.